It's the Mustang Insider Show. Now, here's Chris Sylvester, the voice of the Mustangs.
All right, we are elated to welcome you to another Mustang Insider with Chris Sylvester, yours truly, and Shanele Stiers. You know, there was an uproar around these parts when Shanele Stiers was not awarded the Big West Head Coach of the Year last season after leaving Cal Poly. 17 and 14 overall, 13 and 7, just a massive improvement from the year prior, and an even bigger improvement from the year before she got to San Luis Obispo. There's no question, Coach, that you have re-energized this Cal Poly women's basketball program. And we appreciate you taking some time. I mean, it is opening week. We've seen the ball tipped up all over the place, and we'll be able to do it on our own inside Mott Athletic Center Wednesday night when UC Merced, NAIA opponent, comes to town. And then, somewhat of a tough game, would you call it, over the weekend, going down to face third-ranked USC and Juju Watkins, who I think is going to have that Caitlin Clark type of hype by the time she's done with her college basketball career. I always love talking basketball with you, Coach. What's it like to be past that long off season and get rolling here with the regular year?
Well, Chris, first off, we love your passion and what you do for our Mustang family and for Cal Poly, and you energize Cal Poly athletics as well. So first off, let me thank you for all the great work that you do and for being such a great ambassador of our university. But yeah, I mean, obviously this is what our players, our coaches have worked all off season for, is getting our players ready for this moment. And um, it's so funny because it feels like the work is really never done, but I know our players are certainly tired of beating up on one another. And we got a great week. We got a great competitive UC Merced team coming into Mod on Wednesday to kick things off, and then we turn right around and we like our top 5 opponents. So we're gonna go down to LA and play number 3 USC, and obviously they've got a ton of talent, and they're very well coached. So we're really excited about kind of getting some of our new players, acclimated to competing and playing at this level and putting them in different environments. And obviously when you can play, in a sold out arena in Los Angeles to kind of start the season, it's really exciting, and it's really what college basketball is all about this time of year.
Well, let's hope USC has a little jet lag coming back from Europe, because that's where they're
Right.
opening their season. And I mean, this is only year 3 for you at the helm of this program, but it's been a staple under your regime to schedule these tough pre-Big West games. I mean, I still think the coolest picture I have in calling games here for
Yeah.
almost a decade now is Don Staley hanging out in little old Mott Athletic Center. Big dog South Carolina coming here. Leah Boston, who wound up being the #1 overall pick in the next WNBA draft after that season, was here. And I know you were just getting the program off the ground at that point, but what have you noticed from playing in some of these, Power 4, Power 5 conference games? How have those games, albeit, I know you'd like to pull off the big shocker and
Yep.
and come home with an
Yep.
upset win one of these days, but how much have those games helped better prepare you for, the tough competition that you face, the big dogs in the Big West like
Absolutely.
Hawaii, UC Irvine, UC Davis?
Well, I think what it does is we kind of liken it to, if you've ever gone to the gym and you've done a bench press, right? And like maybe one week you can only lift, the bar and 25s, but you slowly keep working at it, you slowly keep building strength, and the next thing you know, you're doing multiples of that weight, and then you put on heavier weight and you keep moving up. And then if you were ever to go back down in weight, it feels kind of easy. And that's really what we're trying to do with our preseason. Is we've got a really nice, I think, um, array of opponents, right, from across the spectrum. We've got some NAIA schools that we're playing, and we've also got some big time Power 5 top 10 opponents in UCLA, Stanford, and USC that are kind of sprinkled in with some Big Sky opponents. And what I feel like that does is it gives us enough contrast to figure out not only one, where our strengths are, but also where our weaknesses are, so that we can kind of figure out as we move into Big West play. Usually that rounds out, you know, once you start January and you're playing 2 games a week, you've kind of challenged your team in some ways that maybe some of these other programs have not. And what we're hoping is that by putting ourselves in some of these environments, that it kind of makes the trip to Hawaii a little bit easier. We've got confidence from that. We've built some toughness from that. It makes the trip to, UC Irvine and dealing with their athleticism a little bit easier as well. And that it's not the first time that our players have seen those kind of athletes. And so I think you get a lot out of it. And I think at the end of the day, from a recruiting standpoint, great players want to play big time games, and it's also a selling point of ours that putting our players in those kind of environments are not only great for their personal growth and their on court growth, but it's also great for our team and our program to get that kind of exposure. And recruits really resonate with that. And so that's an exciting piece of what we've been able to do here so far.
Well, who knew when you took this job, 2.5 years ago that, a trip to Big Ten country would just be a few hours away. I knew you played in the, and coach, I mean this in all sincerity, but was the Big 12 when you played at
The
K-State, or
big
was
it,
it was
it
the
was the
Big
Big
Eight?
Eight. The
Okay.
Big Eight. So I was 2 years shy of becoming part of the Big 12. So I missed all this merger stuff.
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
Um,
you did. Well, we're
Old school.
happy in our Big West home, and you talk about Hawaii. Obviously, they're bolting to be full-time Mountain West members in a couple of years, which have been a part of Mountain West in football for a long time, and they've seemingly had a strong grip. Them and UC Davis of this conference. UC Santa Barbara hired a new head coach in the offseason that I know you're familiar with, but when you look at Big West women's basketball, you guys finished tied for third in the conference last year. A couple years into the job, do you feel like, playing these head coaches over and over again, these styles over and over again, do you feel like you have a really good grip at what you're going to get with the 20 game conference slate, coming into this new year?
I do. I mean, I think that's one of the things is that one of the things about being in a league is that you develop a certain level of familiarity with one another, and I think that that's one of the things that you know, from a coaching standpoint, is I think you've got to continue to stay really flexible. I think that our style is our style, but I also think schematically you've got to be flexible based upon your personnel. And I think there's a lot of things that I think are going to be nuanced, especially by the time we round through the preseason, where I think we're going to play a little bit differently in stretches than maybe what we've done before. And obviously we really won't know until we get there. There's a lot of bridges that got to be crossed. But with talking about Ashley Haraki and bringing in a point guard, I would tell you that it's something that we're really excited about, is being able to play a little bit faster, and she certainly enables us to do that. She also sets the tone for us defensively. So right now she's out with a bit of a stress fracture. So we're definitely counting the days until she's back full go and healthy with us. But in the meantime, it opens the door for some of our other players um, to get some of that development that we need from some of our younger players as well. So I look at everything as though it's happening for a reason. But when you talk about Chris, the great coaches in this league, it's full of them. You've got Hawaii and Davis who have just been staples. Irvine's really kind of taken their seat at the table too, and then you know the rest of the league is just full of really really great programs, and so it's competitive, and night in and night out I think you're in for a dogfight.
Well, I think the Big West has a little more respect for this program now that they've gotten to see the way your teams play in your first couple of seasons. I think a lot of people were surprised that you found your way into the conference tournament picture that first year. And this past season, you got the bye, and I mean it's so tough when you go up against a team like UC Davis and you beat them twice in the regular season like you did. And then you got to beat them a third time, and they started playing well at the end of that season. I mean, that was a tough draw. I mean, if you were the one seed, you wouldn't want that Davis team. So much size, so much length, well coached, as you mentioned. You mentioned Ashley Haraki, who comes in as a graduate transfer from Santa Clara. A ton of experience, started 92 games in her time there. She's another a midi grad with Sydney Borland
Yep.
and some others that you've had come through the program. Obviously, it's one of the best high school programs in the
Yeah.
country, especially if
Yep.
you look at some of their personnel right now. But you only bring back six players from last year's team. I mean, we thought you had big turnover from year one to year two. Natalia Ackerman was unsure if she'd continue playing. She wound up in the ACC at Cal. Anya McNicholas ran out of eligibility. She brought some defensive presence, right? Averaged almost 2 steals a game. She could shoot it a little bit from the outside. How important is it going to be for names that I'd imagine Cal Poly fans are pretty familiar with at this point? Annika Shaw, her effectiveness from the outside, over 100 career threes in her first 3 seasons here. Sydney Borland, you've often called her an extension of the coaching staff, the glue, so to speak. And then Sierra Lichty, who we were so excited by before her season-ending stress fracture a couple of years ago, comes back, scores in double figures 9 times last year. And then Mary Carter, Sydney Richards, a couple of newcomers from last year's squad that certainly had some bright moments. And obviously, there's still room for improvement there.
There is. I think it's really an exciting and it's a little bit of a scary time just because we've got a really great nucleus coming back, but the bulk of our roster is made up of freshmen. So I'm excited to see what they and how they develop through the course of the year. One of the things that you mentioned was as you kind of went through our returners is they've just been tremendous in terms of just their on-court and off-court leadership. And that's one of the things that we feel really blessed about here is that we've got a great team culture and we wouldn't be able to do that without some of those young ladies that you just highlighted. But I think with all of them, I think they're all ready to take the next step with the way that they play. Um, but when you're early in the season, and I think I say this every year, is like you're really unsure of what you're going to hang your hat on. And I think right now, I think that's where we're at is we know we kind of the upper half of the roster is really solid, and then the lower half of the roster it's still a work in progress and needs some development. So, but I would say every coach in the country is probably going through something really similar right now, unless you're at South Carolina or USC. This is kind of what it is at this level is figuring out how to put together the pieces and really utilize the season to give your team everything that they need so that, as you mentioned earlier, you can play and compete at the end. Because at the end of the day, that's the goal. That's what we're all about here is we're trying to win that Big West tournament and take our spot as one of the elite programs that get to play in March Madness.
So interesting you bring that up. And I think fans will get to know some of these freshmen and I think you're still getting to know some of these freshmen in
Yeah.
regards to like how they're going to impact your team, right? I mean, you see the flashes of potential some days and you see the immaturity in their games and physicality other days. And I think that's always the wild card with freshmen. But your recruiting philosophy. I mean, you bring in Haraki from the portal. I know you used a bunch of visits the offseason prior, but bringing in international recruits in this day and age, do you feel like you're able to snag some of these freshmen a little easier at a job like this with the transfer portal and a lot of those bigger programs kind of keying in on, hey, we don't want a project, we want to retool our roster, we don't want to have to develop anybody and we want a quick fix. I mean, what are your thoughts on just where recruiting's at with women's college basketball? Obviously, we have limitations here at Cal Poly, so you're not going to get everybody that you see in the portal that you like. But how do you feel like when it was all said and done, this recruiting cycle shook out for you? And why the international route? Why do you think that's going to be more effective for your program, say, than snagging some talent here in the continental United States?
Well, those are all really good questions, Chris, and I'll
I
go
asked
back.
you too many. I understand.
No,
I mean,
I'll go back to
try
the
to bullet
beginning.
point them out for me.
Is the nuance of operating in the portal has become something, and again, coaches don't necessarily pull themselves off of their day-to-day duties to have other conversations with coaches a lot, but you do see on social media or when coaches are interviewed, like there is just a difference of a power four portal situation versus maybe our situation. And so what we noticed is that we really resonated with players that um, we felt like had great skill, but still needed development. And we felt like it was the right time with our program to recruit a robust freshman class while we still had some of these incredible returners that provide a lot of this leadership. And it was kind of the perfect segue as we headed into year 3, because at the end of the day, one of the things that we really pride ourselves on in our program is our player development. Kids get better year after year in our program. And I think that's the thing that we feel really, really good about. And we knew that this was the right time to kind of pivot to that, because the portal is just an interesting animal in and of itself. And, young players out of high school or at the high school level, they're very, very interested in what Cal Poly has to offer. Whereas portal players, it's much, much more of a transactional situation. Not necessarily all the time. Like with a young lady like Ashley Haraki, she fit us in terms of she wanted to get developed, she wanted to lead a program, she wanted a different kind of experience, and she wanted the Cal Poly experience, and she wanted the Cal Poly degree. And so it was the perfect marriage. And so I think when you're at a school like ours, it's really about finding the right fit. And for us, we're in as much as we want to win games, we also want to develop people over the long term. So, it's been great having some of the players that we've had that have come in from the portal. And it's been really great having them. But, you blink your eye and they're gone again, and you're trying to replace that. We felt like this would actually stabilize our program for the long haul, is really getting a good core of young freshmen in that we could, really help stabilize and help develop depth. And at the end of the day, that's one of the things that we've noticed in the first 2 years that we've been here, is that the team that wins that tournament is not only playing in March, the Big West tournament in March, is not only playing their best basketball at that time, but they've been the deepest team in the league at that point of the season. You saw it last year where Irvine ended up playing Davis in the championship game. Those were hands down the 2 deepest teams the entire season. And so there's something to be said about quality depth, and that's really been a focus for us this off season and with this recruiting class.
You and I do a really bad job of staying in touch as much as we should during the off season, because I could bug you with another half an hour of questions, but I know you got Jimmy Fallon to jump on next, and you're up against it here. But we're really excited for Wednesday night to get you guys back in action. A field trip game, as some call the Tylenol game, right? I mean, the kids are screaming for 2 straight hours. I don't know how you handled that last week, but that was always a lot of fun. And now it's the real thing, right? These wins and losses are going to start counting towards your record. UC Merced comes to town Wednesday night, 6 o'clock. Hope to join us in the Mott Athletic Center if you can be there. If not, we'll have you covered on ESPN+. Coach, appreciate your time and look forward to catching up a little closer to conference play.
We love you, Chris, and everybody out there in Cal Poly Nation. Go Mustangs.
This has been the Mustang Insider Show. The preceding has been a Learfield's presentation on the Cal Poly Sports Network.